Today on the Commanders Report, we got the latest Commanders trade rumors, including a new trade idea that would land Cam Judon from the New Orleans Saints to the Washington Commanders this year. And then we'll get into Frankie Luvu, the off-ball linebacker for the Washington Commanders, who got some much deserved love from his peers in the NFL this week. But before we get into the content here, guys, don't miss a thing either before, during, or after the Commanders 2025 NFL season this year. You click that subscribe button. We got daily and free in-depth Commanders coverage on this channel. We have watch parties for every single Commanders game this year, regular season and playoffs. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already to never miss your daily dose of Commanders news and rumors. All right, so let's get into our first story of the day here, where USA Today's Cory Woodroof suggests that the Commanders could trade for New Orleans Saints edge rusher Cam Judon. Cory said this about a potential trade that would land Judon in the nation's capital. Judon has been a career Saint, but his odds of winning a Super Bowl in New Orleans feel pretty slim at this point, given where the franchise is right now. The Commanders are a bona fide title contender, but the team could use a rotational veteran coming off the edge to affect the passer. While Judon finishing out his career in New Orleans is the storybook ending, the Saints trading the future Hall of Famer so he can close his NFL days with a contender is probably the best path forward for both sides. Washington would benefit from having Judon on the roster, as he could provide valuable depth off the edge and veteran leadership off the field. And honestly, guys, I've talked about Cam Judon on this channel before. It was maybe a couple months back, but I'm not super interested in him. He's not a pass rusher anymore. He's just not. He's more of a run defender. He's a big body, and he's played in a 4-down front, his entire career there in New Orleans, and he's done a pretty darn good job of that. Obviously, he's a big name. Obviously bringing in a big name would certainly get the fans a little bit riled up. But he's just not much of a pass rusher at this point in time, guys. Honestly, he's more useful almost as like a 3-4 defensive end or a 4-eye, where he's playing almost like an interior type of role, where he's used as somebody that can blow up offensive lines on stunts. He's not really a true one-on-one pass rush winner at this point in his career, and the Commanders already have a bunch of guys like that. They got Dorance, Armstrong, Cleveland Ferrell, bigger guys that are better against the run than they are true pass rushers, and I don't think that this necessarily fills the void of 10.5 sacks that Dante Fowler leaves on this defense after going back to the Dallas Cowboys this offseason. And honestly, I like the options better in free agency. Plus, you don't have to give up a draft pick, right? Von Miller had a really good PFF grade last year of 85.5. I know he's 36 years old, but he is somebody that can still get after quarterbacks and would be awesome in that rotational role as a designated pass rusher. Za'Darius Smith had a decent season last year with Detroit. Jadeveon Clowney's been productive over the last several seasons. Matthew Judon, 2 seasons ago, was a legit number one. Last year, not so much after being traded to the Atlanta Falcons. And then Preston Smith is another solid piece that you can consider if you are the Washington Commanders. But my 2 favorites on this list, and maybe 3 favorites, Von Miller, Za'Darius Smith, and Jadeveon Clowney, I think are all better than Cam Judon right now. Plus, they don't cost a draft pick to acquire. So what's your choice? Let me know down there in the comment section. Trade a 7th-round pick for Cam Judon, type CJ, or would you rather just sign a free agent like Von Miller, Jadeveon Clowney, Za'Darius Smith, somebody else? Type FA down there in the comment section if you want a free agent. And this will be the pinned comment on today's show, so YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time, but let me know what you would do at the edge rusher position. So now let's get into an article from Bleacher Report here, which says that the number one thing that the Commanders can do before the start of the season is, quote-unquote, add a veteran cornerback, not an edge rusher. Matt Holder was the Bleacher Report member that wrote this article, and he had this to say about the biggest need for the Commanders heading into the year. This was a need for the Commanders last year, hence the midseason trade for Marshawn Lattimore, but he wasn't very reliable in Washington. The only other notable veteran at the position the front office brought in this offseason was Jonathan Jones, who also didn't play particularly well in 2024. Meanwhile, the team has Super Bowl hopes and is looking to take advantage of Jaden Daniels being on a rookie contract. So, shoring up the secondary with a veteran would be in line with how GM Adam Peters has operated over the last 2 offseasons. And I guess Matt Holder didn't watch day 2 of the NFL draft. I guess that's just too boring for him because he didn't apparently didn't see Trey Amos, a really good corner that I think is ready to start right away, being drafted in the second round by the Washington Commanders. So not only do you bring in Jonathan Jones, who for most of his career has actually been a very good player, not to mention he's inside-outside versatile and can play in the slot, but Trey Amos is coming in here, and he could be an awesome complement in his rookie season as this team's CB2 on the other side of Marshawn Lattimore. So I don't know if Holder actually knows that Amos is on the team or if he even knows who Amos is, but he's probably in line to be this team's starting CB2 at least at some point during this season. So I really don't think cornerback is a big need for the Washington Commanders heading into the year. In fact, I think it's a pretty big strength for this roster this year after it was a big-time dumpster fire last year. Not only was Marshawn Lattimore dealing with a hamstring injury, which hampered him on the field, not to mention kept him off the field quite a bit after that trade with New Orleans last year, but then you had Benjamin St. Toast, you had Emmanuel Forbes, you had Michael Davis. None of those guys were worth their salt as NFL starters, in my opinion. But this year, you inject Trey Amos and you inject Jonathan Jones in here. You still have Mike Samerstill, who's going to be your slot guy. And even if one of these three starters gets hurt, guys, Jonathan Jones is going to be able to come in and play either on the outside or on the inside. I really don't see much of a need here for the Washington Commanders to add another corner. So I have to disagree with Matt Holder on his take there. I think the most important thing for them to do is add an edge rusher before the season. And then that same Bleacher Report article from Matt Holder says that the Cincinnati Bengals should trade Trey Hendrickson. Now maybe Matt is starting to get on my good side here. This is what Holder had to say about the Bengals letting go of the sack leader last year in the NFL. The Hendrickson contract saga has been going on for a while, and a resolution doesn't appear to be in sight. Meanwhile, the Bengals used a first-round pick on Shamar Stewart, who is also engaged in a contract dispute with the club, and they have Joseph Asai and Miles Murphy to line up at defensive end. If Cincinnati isn't going to pay the 2024 sack leader the money he's looking for, then it should trade him sooner rather than later to maximize its return. So listen, man, I would be 100% A-OK trading for Trey Hendrickson. In fact, I think that this would be Washington's best case scenario. He would be the ultimate cherry on top of the sundae that Adam Peters has been constructing here during the 2025 offseason, adding the NFL sack leader that's had 17 and a half sacks the last 2 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals into a defense that desperately needs one-on-one pass rushing help would be a godsend for this team, in my opinion. Now, I think that this defense will be better than it was last year, even without Hendrickson, but Hendrickson's the type of player on this defensive line that can take this defense to pretty good to really good in just one big move. But I do think that Cincinnati and Hendrickson will probably come to some sort of agreement to keep Hendrickson in Cincinnati. I don't know what that deal is going to look like. Right now, it's not looking particularly pretty, and it's definitely getting ugly between Hendrickson and the Bengals, and I don't know if the Bengals even have the money to pay Hendrickson the cash he wants this year, but I do think that eventually a deal is going to be struck here and he is going to remain a Cincinnati Bengal. But if the trade is going to happen here, I think it's going to look something along the lines of this, where the Commanders don't have a lot of draft picks next year, so I think they'll do a pick swap in 2026 where they give the Bengals their first round pick next year. I think the Commanders would be comfortable doing that because you're not going to be drafting a quarterback or anything next year, but you get the Bengals' second-round pick so they don't lose any picks in terms of the number of draft picks they have in next year's NFL draft. They give them a fourth-round pick in 2027 and then Dorance Armstrong to replace Hendrickson's role in that Bengals defense. And I think that this would be a trade that both sides could agree on if the Bengals decide to come to the table. Now, let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade if you were the Washington Commanders? Type A for accept or D for decline. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. We'll finish up today's show with some good news if you're a Washington Commander fan, which is that Frankie Luvu is getting some much-deserved credit for what he did with the Commanders' defense last year. He was ranked the 5th best off-ball linebacker in football by his NFL peers. Of course, that's execs, that's coaches, and that is players. Here is the list of off-ball linebacker rankings. Fred Warner was number 1. Roquan Smith was 2. Zach Bond, the All-Pro, was number 3. Nick Bolton of the Chiefs was number 4. Luvu gets in there at number 5, and then Tremaine Edmonds is at 6. The ageless wonder, Levante David, slotted in at number 7. DeMarvion Overshown, hopefully he can come back healthy this year after a really nasty injury last year, is number 8. Dre Greenlaw, another Niner, is at number 9. And then Quincy Williams, a really underrated a really underrated off-ball linebacker for the Jets at number 10. Dre Greenlaw, I think, is actually in Denver this year. My mistake. But then Frankie Luvu last year, the reason why he's ranked this high is because he was such an impact defender for the Washington Commanders last year. I mean, and this is the signing that I was the most excited about last offseason. If you've been with us since the 2024 offseason, you guys know how excited I was about the fit of Frankie Luvu coming over here to Washington and Dan Quinn's scheme, and he had almost 100 tackles. He had 8 sacks, all right? So this guy is an absolute weapon as a blitzer, 12 TFLs, so a big-time impact player. He had a forced fumble and then 2 fumble recoveries as well to boot, and he's a decent coverage player as well. So he's kind of the Swiss Army knife for this Commanders defense. He is the true kind of pass rusher designated threat on passing downs, and Dan Quinn is not afraid to unleash Frankie Luvu's skill set as a blitzer, which made him one of the best linebackers in football last year, and I continue that to be the same thing here in 2025, and I would be willing to go as far to say is Luvu's the best defensive player on this team right now. Bobby Wagner is still very good. I really like some of the corners in this room. I like Marshawn Lattimore, and I like Quan Martin, and I like Judon Newton, I like Daron Payne. I like all these guys on the roster, but Frankie Luvu, I think, is the most impactful player on this defensive roster right now, and I'm so glad that he is here with the Washington Commanders. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Who will be the Commanders' best defensive player this season? Do you think somebody breaks out like a Quan Martin or Judon Newton, Mike Samerstill, or do you think it's going to be Frankie Luvu, Daron Payne, one of the veterans? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Commanders News and Rumors. Thank you guys for stopping by today. We'll have more Commanders coverage coming your way tomorrow, so click that subscribe button. And until tomorrow, guys, hail to the Commanders.